Hi there, and welcome to Hyundai Power Products. My name is Adrian, and today we're going to be looking at this HY1000Si generator, and in particular the carburetor. So we're going to be removing, cleaning and replacing the carburetor. Now there are several reasons why you may want to do this. Usually it's contaminated fuel, water in the fuel, or stale fuel which can cause damage to the carburetor, and that's why we're going to go through this process. So before we start on this, you're going to need to remove all of the fuel from the fuel system. Now there is a separate video on doing this, and I'll put a link in the description below. So having drained all the fuel, I've removed the side cover and the carburetor is here. So let's start to take it apart. So the first thing we need to do is to remove this little manifold here, which goes from the carburetor intake to the airbox. So using an 8mm spanner, or you could use a socket, just loosen the two nuts and we'll take them off. So next we're going to pop this little breather pipe out of this clip using a blunt object. I've just got a screwdriver here, and we can remove that out of the way, and then we can just grab hold of the little part and just work it out from the rubber tube at the top here. It will come, and there we are. That's that out of the way. So I'll just pull it off its breather tube to give us a bit more room. We're ready to tackle the carburetor. Now you'll see a gasket on the front of the carburetor here. In this case the gasket is coming off with the carburetor, and we can withdraw it just gently, making sure we're not catching on anything, to a point around here. This is the point where we can access this little clip. So I'll just squeeze it and pull it back out of the way off this rubber pipe here. So I'm going to have to get a pliers now and just tease this pipe off the carburetor. Okay, so with the clip out of the way, just get this rubber pipe started. Sometimes you can pull them off with your fingers. Let's just bring it back out again. A little bit more. Okay, that's the first pipe removed. So having removed the fuel inlet pipe, second pipe here, little breather pipe. Again, we'll use the pliers and just get it moving. And as you can see, the little clear pipe came off, and that will now allow us to pull the carburetor out completely. There's a little pipe on the drain at the bottom there. We can do the same with that. And you'll see that the carburetor is still attached to the generator by the electrical cord that goes to the little stepper motor on the top. So we need to remove this stepper motor. So what we're going to do is remove the entire white plastic framework off the top of the carburetor. There is a little linkage here, like a little shoe with a spring. Be very careful when you're taking the top off not to lose this spring and shoe. So there are two screws, one either side. We'll loosen this one completely first and take it out. Not quite. There we go, we've got that screw out. Now I'm going to hold it in place, hold the top in place, and remove the other screw. Not quite. Okay, that's the two screws removed. Now I'm going to be very careful when lifting this top up. I'm going to hold this little shoe downwards and let the complete assembly come away. And the little shoe is here with a spring. So yes, these if it pops off, that little spring will disappear, never to be seen again. So be very careful when taking the top off. So what I'll do is I'll just pop the little shoe and spring out this piece and keep it safe. So that's the carburetor removed from the machine, and now we're going to go about disassembling the carburetor for cleaning. Now the next procedures I'm going to be doing is to remove the float bowl, the float, the main jet and the emulsion tube. Now this can be done with the carburetor in place, but to do a thorough job it's probably best to remove it completely. But obviously if you want to try and do it in place, watch a little further in the video and you'll see exactly what you will be doing in a vertical position if the carburetor was still on the machine. So we're going to start by removing the float bowl. Now pay attention to the direction of rotation. It's a circular bowl, can go on anywhere around its circumference. But if we look here, we've got the fuel pipes coming in this side, 90 degrees facing upwards. So we'll just pay a mental note to that. And we need to undo the 10mm nut on the bottom of the float bowl. So I've got that started. Now underneath this little 10mm bolt is an O-ring. We'll make sure we don't lose that when we take it apart. So that's that. And now the float bowl will just pull away. And as you can see, there were remnants of fuel. Now, if the inside of the float bowl is particularly rusty, you're going to need to replace the carburetor. And these carburetors are readily available from our parts department. So that's the float bowl removed, ready for cleaning. Next we need to remove the float. So there's a little pin here, a little lever pin or hinge pin. I'll just push it out one way and withdraw that pin. I've got a little pot here which I'm putting the parts in. I'll put that in the pot and we can withdraw the float with the little fuel needle here which switches the fuel supply to the float bowl on and off depending on how much fuel is in the float bowl. So we're going to need to clean the end of this at a later stage. So up in the hole where the bolt came from is the main jet and emulsion tube. So using a suitably sized screwdriver, a flat bladed screwdriver, I can unscrew the main jet. It'll take quite a few turns. You'll get to a point where it'll just pop out the bottom. Not quite. Just a few gentle taps and it'll pop out. Oh, there we go. So the main jet and the emulsion tube came out in one go. If your carburetor is very dirty or glued up, there's a good chance that the emulsion tube won't come out at this stage. So I'm just going to try and demonstrate. I'll put the emulsion tube back in. Let me just see if I can get it to push down into position. Okay, so if I bring it to the camera, where are we? You'll see at the top of the picture there, the little shiny part is the emulsion tube sticking out into the throat of the carburetor. You could stick maybe a piece of wood or a blunt object up and give it a push in this direction out towards the end of the spout, and as you're pushing it, let's have a look, it will come down and out of the bottom. So I'll put the emulsion tube and main jet in my little pot, ready for cleaning. Now another thing you'll notice is the O-ring or sealing gasket for the float bowl itself has stayed on the carburetor. So again, using a blunt object, we just need to pull that little O-ring out of its location. Here it comes. There we are. We'll put that to one side for cleaning as well. Okay, so moving on, you'll see this plastic screw here and a little piece underneath it which needs to be pulled out to be able to get to the passageways inside the carburetor for the idle jet. So we need to unscrew this screw and take it out. So before we remove it, we need to look at the position of the end of the screw, how far it's stuck out. Now I've measured this one and it's 2.5mm, and that's the point where we want to put it back to. So I'll unscrew it. And we'll put that in a little pot for cleaning as well. So the final piece of removal, we just need to prise up this little piece here out of its hole. It's got a few O-rings on it and a passageway through it. So this also needs to go into the pot for cleaning. So the first thing I'd do at this stage would be to use a compressed air gun and blow out every hole that you can see in the carburetor. All the little passageways, holes, everything you can see that's got a hole in it. There's one down in there, there's one here, in through where the fuel comes in, where the needle sits. Literally blow through every hole in the carburetor. And do exactly the same thing with all the small jets. Give them all a good blow with compressed air before we go anywhere, just to get rid of the major parts of dirt that are around the place. The same with the float bowl, give that a good blow out. Everything you've got, give it a good blow to clean off any loose particles of dust or dirt. So the next stage of the operation would be to spray everything with carburetor cleaner. In through every small hole that you can get to. Spray all the surfaces inside, up through this hole, all the little holes. Spray everything with carburetor cleaner in this area, including this small hole here. In exactly the same way, we're going to spray all of these little parts, the emulsion tube here, through the hole in the center. There are minute holes in the sides we need to spray with cleaner as well. Main jet through the center. All the small holes you see in this small piece here. And the end of the carburetor needle, the float needle. We need to clean all these surfaces with carburetor cleaner. Then again, come back with the air line and blow everything off to get it completely dry. And then perhaps with a magnifying glass, we need to look at all these small holes, the hole through the main jet, the hole through the emulsion tube, the hole through the main jet, to make sure that all of these holes are clear. If you hold the emulsion tube up to the light, you can actually see through these little holes in the sides, all the way through and out of the other side. So it's a good test to see if all the holes are clear, is to hold it up to the light and look through. And exactly the same with the center of it. Hold it to the light and look through. And the same with the main jet. You should be able to see all the way through it. So once everything's been cleaned and it's thoroughly dried, we can start the reassembly. So we'll do it in the reverse order. Now this little part might take a bit of doing to get it back into place. So just a tiny amount of engine oil on there. Smear it around the little O-rings that are on there. Will help you to get it back into the hole. So we'll pop that back in. Put it roughly in place, lining it up. And we'll push it down into position. That one wasn't too bad. So again, back in with this screw. I'll just get it started by hand. And I'll screw it back in to the same depth it was. So I'll just check that with a rule, but I'm sure that's about it. Pretty sure that's spot on. So that's those two parts refitted. So now we'll come back and refit the emulsion tube and main jet. So the emulsion tube, the thick end goes in last, the thin end goes in first. So in with the emulsion tube. Main jet next, obviously with the screwdriver slot facing outwards. So I'll just start that main jet. And an exact reverse of the way we took it out. Just give it a little shake just to make sure it's in place. That's it. It should screw in easily, this. Nearly there. There we are. It's stopped. And just give it a nip into position. So that's that back in position. So I'm going to place the O-ring now, very carefully, back in its groove. And that sits in there very nicely. And we need to refit the float. So we need to get the little needle on the end here to go up into this brass tube. So I'll just get it into position, and as you can see, it goes up the brass tube. I'll locate it roughly in position. I'll just line the little hinge pin up, line the plastic float up, and push the pin back in. There's nothing locating this pin in position other than when you put the float bowl on, it can't come out. So that's why it's not positively located. So we've got so far with this. So again, our float bowl the correct way round, the way we took it off. Being very careful that our O-ring is in position. I'll just put it in place there and hold it. Just a quick check around the outside to make sure everything's fine, yes. Back in with the clamp bolt, making sure that the little O-ring is in position. Tighten it up. Okay, that's tight. There we are. One last thing we can do is to check the float. And obviously with no fuel in here, the float isn't floating. We should be able to blow in through the fuel inlet and air will pass into the float bowl, through the valve, through the hole in the side of the output shaft, up through the main jet, up through the emulsion tube and out into the carburetor. So we should be able to blow easily through. But if we turn it upside down and try blowing now, the float with gravity will have shut the valve and we shouldn't be able to blow through it. So that's just a quick test to make sure that the float valve is seating properly. So you'll see at the rear, you have this green gasket here. Obviously the carburetor, and this grey gasket which came off, stuck on the carburetor. If you do damage either of these gaskets, or actually need a carburetor as well, all of these parts, all of the gaskets and the carburetors are available from our parts department. So let's go about refitting the carburetor. So the first thing I'm going to do is fit the little shoe and spring back in. The spring fits over the little circular outcrop. The spring fits into this U shape here. You squeeze the spring and put the part back into position like this. So next we can refit the motor bracket on top. So to put these two parts together, I'll line the two up as if it was going to go on, but you'll see that the output shaft of the motor doesn't line up with the throttle. I can just rotate the throttle to line it up, put the two together, hold it in place, and I'll refit one of the screws. Okay, and then I'll just check around to make sure that that throttle is still lined up and it looks fine. So, in with a second screw. And that's it, it's all good. So we're going to replace the carburetor now, and we've got to be very careful not to trap this wire. We're going to do it in exactly the opposite way to how we took it apart. So the plastic pipe on the back first. Okay. Then we need to connect the fuel pipe. So I'll slide it into position. I'll just hold this fuel pipe out of the way, making sure I don't trap the cable. Where are you? There's the one side. There's the other side. I'll push it back so far. Okay. Pull the fuel pipe round. And now we'll just push the fuel pipe back on again. There's not a lot of room to get in here, so you may need to just hold the fuel pipe with the pliers and pull it into place, taking care not to damage the fuel pipe. Let's pull this out of the way. As you can see, it's coming on. Get that little clip out of my way. I'm being gentle with this, I'm not damaging the fuel pipe. We need to make sure this is completely on. There we go. I'll put the clip back into place. Actually retrieve that little ring. This has come off here. I'll just retrieve that so I don't lose it inside the machine. Okay, that's the fuel pipe back on properly, and I think now push the carburetor back into place. So I've just tucked this long pipe in behind the fuel pipe now. It's very difficult to get the fuel pipe on when you've got these both behind, so I've just tucked this one in behind, ready to go into its final place, and I've replaced that little ring back onto this rubber pipe here, the one that fell off during the shot. So I'll just put the fuel drain pipe back on now, back onto the bottom of the carburetor, bring the little clip into position. There it is. We're ready to put the manifold back on. Okay, now getting this part into this hole can be a little bit difficult, so probably a little bit of oil. Don't need to go mad with this, just a little bit of engine oil, just smeared around there, makes it slippery, a lot easier to get back into the rubber pipe neatly. So I'll line it up. Where are we? There we are. And you should find that it'll push back in. And there we are, it's entered into that rubber pipe perfectly. Make sure it's fully in, which it is. I'm just holding it there, so it will try and spit itself back off again. I'll just put the two nuts on by hand. Okay. And finally we can tighten up these nuts. That one, that one, little breather pipe back on the bottom of the manifold, that's that one, and then the final job is to tuck this little pipe back in where it came from in this little clip. So I'll just open up the little clip, just a little, and that should be enough, there we are, to get the pipe in. Just check we're not fouling on the choke lever. No, that's absolutely fine. And that's it, reassembled. So it'd be at this point that I'd probably refill the machine with fuel, turn the fuel tap on, make sure the breather's open on a filler, and then leave it for a few minutes to see if we get any fuel leaks. If we haven't got any leaks, chances are we've done it properly. So back on with a little access door. Tighten up the screw. There we are. That's the carburetor cleaned or changed. Well, I do hope you found this demonstration useful. For more information on this or any of our other products, visit www.hyundaipowerproducts.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and thank you for watching.